Last week, I'll tell you, me and Keith Kelly traveled to the border in more of an education, fact-finding trip. That's my second trip down to the border. And as I come back now, I still have more questions than I do answers. I'm not going to, it's a sad situation. I'm going to give you some numbers real quick. Since this parole program started, you've had 111,000 Cubans, 214,000 Haitians, 96,000 Nicaraguans, 121,000 Venezuelans that have come to the border under this parole system. Out of that number, 110,000 Cubans have been granted parole, 210 Haitians have been granted parole, 93 Nicaraguans have been granted parole, and 117 Venezuelans, for a total of 530,000 that are here in the United States that have been granted parole. 530,000. That's a scary number. And let's understand what they are. They're not here on a legal status. They're here in a lawful presence that's been, basically their status has been deferred by the federal government. They're a protected class. The one thing I think Keith Kelly will tell you the same as me is those two words, scary. They're a protected class. What does that mean? That means there's nothing that Sylacauga can do. There's nothing that Talladega County Commission can do. There's nothing that the state of Alabama can do because of what the federal government has allowed to happen. I promise you, we will not leave here tonight. There's anybody that's got a question, I want you to ask the question. But you're probably going to be as frustrated as I think we are. There's a lot of the questions we don't have answers to. We're still trying to find those answers. I want somebody to ask about the vetting process. That's something I want you to ask tonight when we start having the questions. Ask us about the vetting process, because I had the opportunity to talk to one of the guys from Border Patrol, and he explained the vetting process. But also I think once we're explaining to you about the NGOs, which is a non-government organization, these charities that are down there, and I'm going to tell you, they're in money laundering operation is all they are. They are a legal, allowed by the federal government, a money laundering organization, because they're not only taking advantage of the citizens here, they're taking advantage of these people coming across the border also. I'm going to sit down, and then Keith will come up and say a few words like Ben, and then we'll come here. I think y'all got so many questions. I just feel like it'd be better that y'all ask the questions, and let's do the best we can do. Main thing is, I appreciate the First Baptist allowing us to use the church tonight. And we'll give you our phone numbers before you leave tonight. If you have a question, call. This won't be me. We'll be glad to do what we can do. Thank you.
As Lane said, we've been at the border, and that was an eye-opening experience. We saw things going on there that you're not seeing on your national news. It will terrify you, and it will change your life once you see it. These Border Patrol agents have their hands tied. They're frustrated. They're dealing with things that they have to go home each night and see their wife and children and realize what they've seen and dealt with that day. And it's a lot to deal with. Things I won't get into too much today. But when you talk about Border Patrol, you talk about the different agencies and the complexities of this that we're having trouble with navigating. I think there's roughly about 7 agencies that deal with different aspects of immigration. There's about 180 to 85 work permits, visas, different type of programs that people can come to this country legally on to work in different programs. Agriculture, you see it quite a bit. They come in for a certain period of time each year, help get the crops in or whatever the case may be, and then they go back home. And many times it's the same ones coming back year after year. When you look at some of the frustrations that's going on, you've got, as Lance said, you've got those that are here legally, and that's primarily from what we found out what we're dealing with here. And then you've got those that are illegal. So the vetting process is very important, but when you get there, you get down to the border and you find out, a lot of them don't even know who their sponsors are going to be. They're supposed to have a sponsor that looks out for them, that helps them, gives them direction so that they know what to do, what not to do. Coming from different cultures, Venezuela was mentioned. It's a communist country, so you can't just deport them back there. They won't take them. So you've got a lot of different dynamics there, not just speech, those types of things as well. But one of the things I think that's important, we've all sent letters, including Senator Tuckerville and Senator Britt and Congressman Rogers. We've all sent letters to the President and to Homeland Secretary Maracas asking for relief to show us, to educate us, to help us know where people are coming, how they're tracking them, if they are, whatever the case may be, because you're supposed to be tracked. When they come across, they're getting money. Roughly, some are getting as much as $5,000, food stamps, and telephones. Telephones, we're told, are designed to call in to their sponsors so that they can give their reports on where they're at. But basically, President Biden or Vice President Harris could do an executive order with one signature and solve this problem we've got right now. One signature, and then we just have to look at who can stay and who can't from that point. So that's one of the things that we kind of got into that we tend to forget. How do you fix the problem? When we talk to even the border agents, they fix the problem on how you vote in November. That seems to be where it is. You make a decision then as to whether this type of behavior will continue or not. In my view, it also looks like in the federal government we got into human trafficking business. There are a lot of these folks that are victims. They're dying on the way over here, including women and children mainly. Horrible things are being done to them, and they never make it. I think the thing you've got to remember in all this is no matter how many times or you hear negative things about our town or our state or our country, whatever it may be, however bad you may hear, these people are risking their life to get here to what we enjoy every day. God has blessed this land, and He's blessed us, and these people want a taste of it. They're willing to risk their lives here for it. I think we have to be responsible in what we do. Councils, commissions, the state legislature, our hands are tied to a large degree. Now we can do some things legislatively, and we're going to work on a package of bills to try to help with some of the things that can be done. Major legislation was passed, I think it was in 2011, roughly around 10 to 12 years ago. Immigration reform in Alabama is the toughest in the country. Federal courts struck down much of those laws then that are no longer in place. But we look forward to hearing your questions today. It is important that we hear what you have to say, because that may help us knowing what other questions to ask. Just before the meeting tonight, I talked to Congressman Rogers' office and to see if there was any the latest news, if they had anything recent come up. What that office has to do, and I'm talking about a U.S. Congressman now, had to put in a form, ask specific questions, and submit that form to the Department of Homeland Security to get answers. Something wrong with that system. Something wrong with that process. So I don't know that we're going to have the answers you want to hear tonight, but we'll be glad to tell you what we do know. But I think it's important you share with us your thoughts and what you're seeing, because that will help us know what questions to move forward. And I think that, if some of you want to know what we saw at the border, we'll be glad to tell you as well about that.
What I can say is that it is a struggle to find answers. And I think everyone wants answers. But the problem is we don't have anything definitive that we know. So even when we talk about the CHDN program or parole program, we can't definitively say that every single person that is an immigrant in this community came in under that program. They could have also come from an asylum program. They could have come from another program. So it is impossible, and I think we should preface everything we say today, that nothing is a definitive statement. And when you say that, I want you also to understand that the federal government has created chaos. It is chaos at the top. It's chaos in which they communicate, that they are unable to monitor, and they're unable to deal with this problem they have created. And imagine a river that flows downstream. Well, our community is downstream from the federal government. So it has created chaos here locally. So I say that to say, do not allow the federal government's chaos to cause us to become toxic. We must work with each other and together to solve this problem as best as we can. As Senator Kelly said and Senator Bell said, our hands are tied to a certain extent. But there are things that we still can do in the state legislature, and we will do everything to the fullest extent that we can. And I feel confident from conversations that I've had with the two of them, and a Zoom call we had earlier today with my fellow House members, that we will come with one of the most comprehensive package of bills related to immigration that a state has. We will develop monitoring systems within our state for parolees, and we will be able to know where they are, who they are, and we will hit and go after those sponsors that have failed these individuals. I think it's very important that we understand that when we talk today, as both Senator Bell and Senator Kelly said, we are talking about human beings. And that anger that you feel, or frustration that you feel, is at the federal government, not at these individuals. And these individuals have been put through a system that is unfair to them, that is unfair to our local community, because we don't have the resources to support them. And these sponsors that were supposed to do these things have not done them and have failed them. And they have sold these individuals a bag of goods that is not true. And I think you should all remember that. And then we should also remember that us as a community are now tasked with doing the responsibility that these NGOs, these sponsors said they would do and signed a contract with the federal government to do, and they failed. They didn't just fail. It's a money make. I would say it's money laundering and it's a pyramid scheme. The pyramid scheme is instead of selling you product, it's selling human beings. All they care about is the number of human beings they get into this country and they dump in other places because they make more money off those bodies, and they do not care what happens to those people. And they do not care what community they cause problems in and what chaos they cause. And I think you need to remember, it is chaos, and that is coming down from the very top to us. And we are indicative of every community across this country. It is just pure chaos. But we can do everything we can to stay united and move forward. The key is looking forward and doing the best we can. So thank you all, and I'll be happy to answer any questions along with everyone else.
Social media has gone amok, and there's rumors everywhere because we spend a lot of our time trying to wade through all that. That's taken an enormous amount of time. When people are putting suspicions there, you know, I remember one thing was 2 buses. There's 2 bus loads coming here. That was a high school football team headed to play a football game. And, you know, that was on social media. They're busting them in, but it didn't show you getting them off where they got off. Well, I spent 2 days tracking that thing down to find out it was a football team. 2 days we could have spent on trying to find more information on this. So I would encourage you with the social media, you know, be guarded in those. If you know something, that's great. That's great. But it really would help us because we're watching, we're listening, we're trying to get to the bottom of those. Yes, sir.
You said you guys are on the border. To get here from Haiti, you're not going to be walking that way. So the air transportation from Haiti, do you have any idea how they were transported out of there?
We got a briefing from Border Patrol. They showed us a video that's being played in some countries, and it's a coming to America video. It's like a commercial. What we have on TV is commercials, and it's showing us glorious life in the United States and telling you, if you want to come to the United States, call this number. Well, you call the number, and then they tell you, okay, per person it's going to cost you X amount of dollars, and it shows a glorious travel to the United States. That's not what really happens. They pick you up, whether it's in Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, Nicaragua. They basically pick you up and get you part of the way there. You've sold everything you have in your possessions. Your family, you've saved everything you could, and it's anywhere from $7,500 to $10,000 per person is the average, what they told us the average price is. They get you on a boat, and they take you to a point around Mexico. And then from there, you're thinking, on the video, it's a real nice travel. But from there, that travel don't exist. A lot of it is walking, a lot of it is tough. A lot of people don't make it. For that 530,000 that are here, I would hate to know the number of people that didn't make it. That's why after the briefings, we're saying this is human trafficking. And these NGOs are taking advantage, these counties are taking advantage of these people also, and a lot of them didn't make it. So that's, the commercials would actually turn your stomach that they showed us when we were there, what's being played in these countries.
You're being very careful in not identifying these NGOs, I notice.
One thing, let me expand on and jump back on that. So, Lance mentioned at the amount of money it's costing to come over here. So you can pay it up front. Or believe it or not, you can come on credit. Now think of the kind of money that we're talking about and where they're coming from. How many of them are going to have that kind of money? So what basically if you're doing, you're coming on credit. So you're coming here, you're basically in servitude until you pay that debt off. I mean, it's human trafficking no matter how you stack it.
You guys are pretty sure all the funding is coming from the individuals and not from another source.
I'm gonna walk over here and show you, but the one that we got to visit is Catholic Charities, RGV, for the Rio Grande Valley. And I will tell you, that is a money-making operation. The sheriffs got up and basically said they're going across the border and help you do the CBP one out. You do the out, they charge you $1,500 to do the out. Then they're back across the border, and then they come in, ICE and Border Patrol will process you, and then they end up, once they get you processed, give you your phone, give you your money, then they take you to, this is one of the main places, they have 4 hotels rented in McAllen. 4 full hotels they have. They take you there, then the federal government writes them a check for $1,500 per person they process there. Well, the people have already paid them $1,500, so they're making $3,000 per person there. And I will tell you,
The federal government writes.
the federal government is also paying them. You look it up, they've already paid them over $7 million this year. Oh, to that one charity.
What is the parole status that you referred to?
From having talked with a few Haitians that live here or here in Sylacauga, the parole program is called the CHNV program, Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan. It is a status that you get which allows you into the country, which delays your actual hearing on your immigration status, but it gives you a work permit which allows you to work. So technically you have a delayed status, but you have the right to work within this country. There are many different ways in which the people in the parole program come into this country. They come in by air travel, which is the majority, come in through air, some cross the border, they come in by ship, they come in all different ways. All they have to get to is a point of entry into the United States and then fill out their forms.
Disqualified from the program. That's not true.
Do what?
Did he go to a microphone? Ask him to go to a microphone. Ask him to come in.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, sir, but he's asking a question, so let's. Well,
What we're saying is true is we witnessed it.
You need to read.
Well, we were there.
I'm a bottom line kind of guy. So we're talking about over 500,000 legal immigrants that we're having to deal with now.
Correct.
These are not illegal.
Correct.
You're telling us that your hands are tied.
Correct.
Our police department's hands are tied, and us citizens are tied. We can't do anything until November 2nd. Is that pretty much the gist?
Yes, sir, it is, unless they violate a criminal law that's on the statute, an assault, a DUI, any criminal law that we currently have, they are technically a protected class, and there's nothing we can do because they are technically a protected class.
And you can't stop ID that got a backpack, can't speak English.
But they cannot treat them any different than they treat me, Ben, or Keith, or any of you. They cannot. Let me say this, if the police department went and did something different, I believe the U.S. Attorney's Office would come down on them. I mean, it's not something that you gotta treat them the way we're all treated.
All right. Well, I appreciate y'all, love you, love this town, love these citizens, police department, and we'll just hold on to November.
We just need to pray about that.
Amen. Woo!
Aren't we here to talk about Sylacauga and how this Haitian situation affects us as citizens in Sylacauga?
That's exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're here about.
Then to start a conversation with this community to get us compassionately relating to each other, to start the conversation with terms like, oh, it is very scary. And these numbers with 530 people, 1,000 people coming in as parolees, and 1 million immigrants coming into the country, and the border, and talking about what the United States has or has not done, that, to me, is setting a volatile tone for the citizens here. And we still haven't found out what's happening in Sylacauga.
We do not know how many are here. We do not know an exact number, and we cannot say definitively what program they entered this country in, where they entered the country, and that is an answer that we will probably never know. We will never know that information, but what we can do is we can look at what, as a state, we can do in terms of creating our own monitoring system, work with our local city, and whether it be Sylacauga, it be Childersburg, it be Pell City, it be Anniston, we all work together because that's where we're going to grow and how we're going to be strong. But if we continue to fight with each other, I don't think we will step forward and we will continue to be in this vicious cycle.
Exactly. That's why we need what's happening in Sylacauga. So sounds like to me there was a concern about immigrants, Haitian immigrants in Sylacauga and how it affects our city.
It was a broad macro level view. If you want to get down to a micro level view, they have been victims within a system. They never should have come here to begin with. It was unfair to them to come to a place where they were told there would be jobs when there were no jobs for them. How is that fair to a person? So what we can say is the church is working to try to teach people English. The sponsor is supposed to do that, and the church is stepping up and doing that. So the immigrants that we have here.
How many do we have?
Well, because the federal government cannot give us that information, we cannot say. And I would not say a number, and I don't think anyone in the state would give you a number because we can't. We can't even do that. And if I was to guess, it would cause a problem. Because I would guess, or any of us would guess too low, too high, and then...
But we are creating a problem. We are saying there is a problem when we don't even have any facts or any information to say there is a problem. And people are talking about they're having the jobs, they're taking the food, they're getting our money, they're getting our taxes. What are we talking about?
Well, what we are talking about is that there are Haitians here. And I'm not saying that there is a problem the way you're saying it. What I'm saying is there's a problem and a lack of information. The lack of information that we can give you. You had a question. You came to ask a question. If I can't give you a definitive answer, how can I answer your question? So did I say there was a problem or not a problem? That's for anyone to decide whether or not there's a problem based upon a set of facts. The problem is I cannot give you a set of facts for you to make a true determination. So without that information, how can you truly say there's a problem or not? What I can say is that we do not know information, that the federal government will not give it to us and cannot give it to us. And to me, that is a problem. That is a problem that you, as my constituent, could ask me something and look me in the face and say, how many Haitians are here? That was a question that you asked, right? You asked that question. You said, how many Haitians are here? And I can't tell you. Did anyone on the stage say we didn't want Haitians here? Did anyone say that? No, but what we can say is that we just cannot give you the basic facts. So what we can do is we can look at legislation that would tell employers, when you hire a parolee into this country, you must notify us. And what you can do is then we would know. So to answer your question, and the statement that you made, it creates certain problems. Like, one, what do we do when we have to hire English second language teachers, like Marshall County? If we have to do that, we don't have the resources. But if we knew where a Haitian or a Nicaraguan or Venezuelan were located, we could then reallocate resources in the state to supplement a Board of Education that needs a teacher.
The city council meetings that I've seen have been just people have been kind of very upset about, supposedly about Haitians who are doing whatever they say they're doing, and there is no proof that that's so. So that's why that's my concern. And when you use terms scary, like, oh, it's scary, and it's terrifying, and this is happening to cities all over the country. And I appreciate if you all are not campaigning here, because, you know, you keep saying the federal government hasn't done this thing, and we keep talking, I know the trickle-down theory, that things happen, you know, and come down the line, but we are still talking about in Sylacauga what our difficulty is. How do we get citizens working together? And how do we welcome people when they come to the city and not consider it a problem if it's not a problem? That's my question. That's
And every question I've had from a phone call here has been, how did they get here? What's the process of them getting here? And how did we wake up one morning and they're here? The Haitians. That's what I mean, I don't know. Every phone call I've had that has come from Hattauga County has been, tell me how they got here, tell me what they're doing here. And so that's what I've been trying to find those answers out. I don't know those answers. Most of the ones here, when I saw how they're brought here, it really upset me, the way they're treated. I'm telling you, the way they're treated would upset you.
One of the things that we tried to do tonight is let you know how we got here. Give you some background of how we got here. That's what we tried to do by telling you what we saw at the border, those kinds of things. So you understand how they got here and some of those policies and things. Now, we're not up here campaigning or anything like that. And the federal government policy, you know, the president sets the policy. The policy is the policy. They can change that. You know, we can't control that, but that is whatever it is what it is. But one of the reasons we've given you the background that we've given you is so you kind of understand how we got to this point.
I understood that you were trying to paint a picture.
Yes.
My concern was how you started to paint that picture. You started it in a negative format. Mr. Kelly, who spoke, kept talking about how terrifying it is. The people can come as a work program, they can come, and they're getting monies, they're getting, somebody said $5,000, they're getting phones and getting food stamps and so forth. These kinds of things are not giving us facts about the Haitians and who are here and so forth, but you're giving us this information that to me just it incites people's anger.
Yes, ma'am. I respectfully disagree with some of that was my comments, some of it wasn't. But somebody asked earlier before we started about taxpayer money. Well, the phones they got were paid with taxpayer money. The money on the food stamp card was paid with taxpayer money. You got a right to know where the money's coming. That's not saying you agree or disagree with it. That's just telling you how they got it and how they got here. That's all that was about. It's not trying to paint a picture of extreme negativity or anything like that. It's painting a picture of reality of kind of what's been dealt with.
I want to tell you something that is scary. This time last Tuesday night, Dr. Vickers Ranch in Brooks County, Texas, we were on a side-by-side riding around. In Brooks County, since 2021, on those ranches right through there, where Dr. Vickers Ranch is, 246 people have been found, women, children, men, dead out there coming across trying to bypass the illegal side. The illegals trying to bypass. It's scary when these farmers are out there and they're coming across. That's the scary part. I'm not saying it's scary that they're here. It's scary there's so many unknowns. Yes, I will still tell you, it tore my heart out going across that ranch. It tore my heart out going into that Catholic shelter and talking to a woman from Venezuela. She had a baby 8 days earlier and had that baby here in the United States and talked to her. She has nowhere to go. She has no idea where she's going.
But I understand, but there are uncertainties among regular citizens.
Amen.
And things that happen. But the last thing is, this is not a border state. You keep comparing this to a border state.
I disagree. Yes,
And
it's a
so,
border
but it's
state.
not,
They're not keeping them in Texas. They are.
It's a border state.
All-
But it's not Texas. It's not the stories that you're telling. That's not us. We just want to hear about us and how this affects us and where we go from here.
I disagree. We are.
I want to hear it all.
Every state is a border state under these policies. When you vote 530,000 people out into the United States in a 3.5-year period, we're all border states.
We got a highway system that you're here from anywhere. We also have the border down there at the coast. We forget about that. But when you have our highway system, you can. You look at I-10 where people are coming in there and then they're spread out. So I respectfully disagree. We are a border state. I think some of the lack of policies that we have now on immigration crossing the border has made almost every state a border state to some degree. I understand what you're saying, and I don't mean to belittle that now. It's just a different perspective.
As you know, our government from the top all the way down to the city level is 3 branches. The reason we have those 3 branches is to keep the other branches in check. What's the next steps of keeping the executive branch in check of this blatant abuse of its power to let these people cross the border like they are?
Well, again, that's going to be a federal issue with the executive branch, but obviously it's been said numerous times, we need to change the White House in November. That will change the executive branch. But dude, what I can say is we have a different Congress. There is a bill right now that Senator Chuck Grassley has sponsored called the Parole Reform Act.
I think you're kind of missing the point here. It's not so much waiting for November for the next vote. They are blatantly breaking the law. You ask the citizens of our town to uphold the law, but not for them. How is that even possible?
No, I ask everybody to uphold the law. Whether you be the President of the United States or you be a street sweeper, everyone must uphold the law.
Then why isn't it being enforced? That's my question. What's the next step to get enforced? And I don't want to hear we have to wait until November.
Okay, well, what I'm telling you now is you're talking to 3 members of the state legislative branch. That would be an action of our law enforcement. We are not law enforcement. We write the laws. And what we will do is we will write laws for the state of Alabama that, as I keep saying, will be the most comprehensive for the state of Alabama. But we have no power to go tell an arrest, as you said, or whatever you're asking us to do to Joe Biden. We don't have that authority. No one in this room does.
No, you're correct. I'm not asking you to go out there and arrest Joe Biden. What I'm saying is you do have the power to push it up the chain. Right?
In June of 2011, way before we were in the legislature, the Beeson-Hammond Act was passed by the Alabama legislature. The federal court struck most of that bill down. That was one of the toughest immigration bills in the United States at the time.
It was the toughest.
But by the time it got finished with the federal courts, it was watered down so that bill was watered down. So the state has tried.
But the state does have its responsibility to the states.
Correct.
And look at Abbott, what he's doing in Texas. He took it upon himself to go down there and try to secure that border.
Correct.
Right? Is he catching heat for it? Yes, of course he is. Right? But he's doing the right thing. And that's what's important, is that we do the right thing. Okay? And I think that has to be stood up from the rest of the states. I think the rest of the states have to push that up the chain at the federal level.
And General Marshall has filed with Texas, and I think 13 of them total, has filed some briefs in federal court on some of these issues. Michael Banks, the border czar for the state of Texas, we spent some time with him last week. And some of the things they're doing, the federal court is making them not do. You think, when they come across the Rio Grande, they put the barbed wire and the buoys and things like that nature. Well, what happened first? Then U.S. Attorney's Office took it to federal court, and they had to move a lot of that. They come in and cut it. Texas would put it in, federal government would take it out. And so there's nothing, we can't put a border or put a barbed wire on I-10 or I-65.
No.
Well, I know. Look, we're as frustrated as you are.
Yeah.
We have, when we get these phone calls, there's so much of it we don't have answers to, and we still can't get answers. We went last week and spent 3 days in Texas with the border czar, with Border Patrol, ICE, I'm trying to think what other groups there were, but we spent days with them, and most of them still have questions. They can't answer a lot of the questions. There's more unknowns than knowns, and that's the frustrating part.
they're frustrated too. Your border patrol and all, they're frustrated too, because their hands have been tied.
I'm sure they are.
And, but one of the things that did come out of the trip that Lance and I made was we did learn some of the things that Texas was doing and some of the legislation that might can be applied here. And we've got people working on that now to see what we can do from a state rights standpoint, because state rights is something that we can work on. And the House and the Senate both have a group of people that are working together to see what we can bring forward next session.
I look forward to seeing it.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, so again, we're probably the only people that have a definitive answer for that. We'd like to answer the lady's question over there and also keep it local for the lady over here. My wife and I purchased the old chicken plant that's on Old Birmingham Highway, and we had no hand in sponsoring anyone coming into Alabama, nor do we intend to. And eventually, when we open that thing up for business, we'll be hiring Alabama's first. So, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, so my name's Rebecca. I just have a few things to say and then a question. I, first of all, find it highly disturbing that my taxpayer dollars are going to fund ESL teachers for these people. And I understand why you're describing it this way, that yes, they are human beings and things like that, but they are here on our territory and we're paying for them, and I don't appreciate that aspect of it. And I understand that your hands are tied and everything. It's just very frustrating as someone who's trying to raise a family and who's trying to keep more money in my pocket so I can provide for my family in this economy, that my money is going to pay for these people who just come across and they think they're gonna have such a great life. My question really is about the monitoring that you guys keep saying that you're gonna try to implement. I'm interested in how that would be implemented, what that would look like, kind of just really about that, because monitoring sounds great, but I want to know what that would look like.
The first part of what you're saying is we're frustrated too, extremely. We've got veterans out there that need help, that are not getting it. So we're frustrated about that too. The monitoring system, we do have something that's being used by the state, and the state prison system, and I think, did you want to address that, Lance?
Yeah, I can on a call we had with House members today on our, like Senator Bell said, there's some House members and Senate members working on things. On a call we had today with House members, we discussed an idea or potential legislation on basically, again, we've got people drafting a bill right now, but it would be that when you hire a parolee, when you hire someone under the CHNV program, you report, I hired John Doe. John Doe lives at, 100 First Street in Sylacauga, Alabama, or at, wherever that person might live. Well, now that information has been reported to our Department of Labor, we now know who's in our state. We know where they are living and where they are employed. Right now, we don't know any of that. So that does two things for us. One, it tells us they're in this state. It tells us they are employed. It also then gives us an address, and we get their what's called a C11 number. Their C11 number is when you are here on a parole program, your work permit is stamped C11, you have a code. We then could do a Freedom of Information Act. Our Attorney General could get that sponsor's name. We then would know that that individual just gave birth at the hospital, uninsured, and that sponsor is supposed to pay for all their medical needs. Or the First Baptist Church had to teach them English. That was something else that sponsor was supposed to provide. Well, now we can say, sponsor, we spend X number of dollars as a state, you pay us back. So we will be able to monitor them, and we will be able to hopefully get made whole and compensated for the expenses that we as a state had to put out for these individuals when someone contractually agreed with the federal government to do that.
And how many of them there are.
And we will know how many and where they are, and if they change jobs.
So what are we going to do about the people who are not working? And how are we monitoring those people? How are we supposed to maintain safety for our families with these people here that we don't know?
Yeah, well, we're, like we keep saying, our hands are tied. We have to think creatively because of what's called the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Supremacy, the federal government controls immigration. So we have to nip at the edges and do it from regulating our businesses, or regulating our hospitals, or whenever they go to, track them wherever they go, whenever we get their information. We can't just say, you're an immigrant, give us our information, because that's illegal. It's against the federal U.S. Constitution. So we have to nip at the edges, and most of them will, at one point or another, either work through a staffing agency or work for a direct hire, and so we will get their information at some point.
In the election, if we do get the executive seat and everything, what is the plan looking like to, like, if this stuff is stopped, what is the plan to get these people out of here? How is that? We don't know. Okay.
You got a plan? We'll be glad to see it.
I was hoping you did.
It depends on the politics who you believe.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Tonight we're talking a lot and trying to have a lot of sympathy for these people being human trafficked here. Make no mistake, it's terrible. However, I don't hear any discussion, how are we protecting the citizens of Sylacauga here first? And let me preface it with this. I'm not talking about crime, even though we know crime comes with mass migration. I'm not talking about the cultural differences. I'm talking about the economic factors at play currently. We know inflation has hit everyone's wallet in this room. Not a soul in here goes to the grocery store today and says, wow, that's cheap. You go, wow, those items are a lot more expensive than they were 2-3 years ago. My concern is we have these people, we can talk about legal or not, and right now we know deportation is off the table because the current executive branch in charge. But what are we going to do to protect the people of Sylacauga so when it comes to economic opportunities such as jobs in a hard job market where wages have shrunk, our purchasing power of the dollar has shrunk, how are you guys, our legislature, is going to protect everyone in this room, everyone who lost their job, when you're bringing in cheaper labor that's going to drive wages down in the state of Alabama? Irregardless, that happens across the globe. You look at Europe, mass migration drives wages down. You look at other states where you have, in other states, Tyson's Foods, they hire one group, bring another group because they work for cheaper. So how are you in the state of Alabama can protect everyone here while your hands are tied on the executive level?
Nobody wants that one. Nobody wants that one. Well, first of all, we didn't bring them here. That's the first point. The second point is the last 2 years, we've passed 2 of the biggest economic packages in the history of the state to bring work here, to bring business here, so that we do have those jobs, not just any job, but higher paying jobs. Now they got tax incentives to come here, but that's one of the things that we come to bring here, to try to bring more jobs here and for poor people. If you've got, the capital system works pretty well. I think if you come here and I've got a job, I'm going to come a lot nearer hiring you, where I can tell you how you're going to do this instead of I spend half a day here with somebody else trying to teach them how to do it, and I can just tell you.
How are we going to push businesses to hire the national citizen who was born here, or someone, let's say, who went through the process with the green card and didn't just get expedited through the biting human trafficking program? Because the families who reside here first take priority. So how are you going to incent? And it's not about the number of jobs. There's a lot you can't do because the Biden administration with the money printing has destroyed the economy. It's about the jobs that are currently here, the positions that are currently open. How are we going to incentivize those businesses to make sure, or punish them, to ensure that they hire citizens over these people coming here?
I will agree. What you're talking about is the free market, basic economics. If someone will do a job for less, you will hire the individual literally for less. It's basic economics. So what you're questioning is, how do we tilt the scales? How do we make it to where that cheap labor that comes from a foreign source that has been through a labor broker or been brought here by a staffing agency or whoever, been brought here, plugged here to be that cheap labor? Because we deal in an international, a global economy. Global in terms of the sale of products, global in the terms of human labor and human capital. But what we can do is we can look at that, and you are right, but how do you do that? You have to tilt the scales. So you have to regulate. And regulation is always a scary thing if you're a conservative, because then you're telling a business or a person what they can and can't do, who they can and can't hire. And that's always dangerous water to tread. I think you would agree, we don't like telling people what they can do with their business, but I think we can look, as we talked about, in regulating businesses. You can't punish them because they have a right to hire whoever they want to. But what you can do is incentivize. What do businesses not like? They don't like regulations. You don't like being regulated. You don't like having to fill out more forms. You don't like having to say, I hired this individual for so long. They worked in this department. They now move here. I have to personally keep up with them. I have to do this paperwork. So it becomes more of a bureaucratic nightmare to actually deal with that.
Point of the regulation.
That is the point of the regulation, which incentivizes, that could be a point of the regulation, which would incentivize you not to hire that individual, but that employer is free to hire whoever they so choose.
So it doesn't sound like you're in favor of protecting Alabama citizens.
I did not say that. I think you were wrong in what I said. I said that as a conservative Republican, I don't like telling businesses what they can and can't do. However, what I was talking about is a regulation placed on businesses that would incentivize them to not hire a C-11 employee because it would cause them more paperwork and more bureaucracy.
Wouldn't that be the whole point, though, is to make it more difficult to hire those people?
Exactly. That was the point of what I said. If you have to do all this paperwork, you're not going to do it because it's easier to not deal with that.
Okay, so that's fine. Let's roll that out to protect the people here while the migrants are stuck here.
Again, we have no say. When you say stuck here, I can't do anything about it. If we wanted to say move them out, we'd be guilty of kidnapping because they're federally protected here. And if you look at what the other states have done, there's a very different thing. What Florida and what Texas did when they moved people out, those were illegal immigrants, not legal immigrants. In fact, right now, Florida is spending upwards of $2 million defending itself in court over moving 50 migrants that were illegal here to Massachusetts. So the state of Alabama we would have to put in a line item in our budget to move people out, and we would all be guilty of kidnapping. And so, yes, they are stuck here because of federal policy. So, yes, you are correct.
But what are you doing to protect the people here so they have preference for the economic opportunities that currently exist?
Well, we will not go into session until the spring, but what I can tell you is some of the things I just said. What we can do is we can incentivize the hiring or de-incentivize the hiring of a parolee. And short of that, we would be violating the Constitution if we said you cannot hire an individual. The federal government would strike that down and we would be in court and lose immediately. And I, for one, love and want to protect our tax dollars, and passing a bill solely so we can get a clap or get people happy when we know we're going to end up spending millions of dollars in court is not a good use of our tax dollars. I would much rather pave a road, and I would much rather pay to get someone training and education than I would pay our Attorney General $5 to $10 million to lose in federal court.
There's nothing we can do right now. And I think I don't like that answer, but that's the only answer we have.
I disagree with that statement about the city council. You want me to speak?
Well, is he done?
I disagree with the fact that the mayor and the city council have their hands tied. But they do have their hands tied. They can communicate. They can talk to people that voted them into their positions. We did not have to call Montgomery to come here and have you speak to us when they are capable. We want to talk about Sylacauga. Who better to talk about Sylacauga than our mayor or our council? We've been here an hour and nobody's brought that up. No, we've been in Texas.
Well,
We're talking about Sylacauga. The division was caused by them. The rumors were not stopped by them. Amen. So that's where the problem lies as far as I'm concerned. I don't care who comes to Sylacauga. If you want a job to work, come to Sylacauga and work. But don't lie to us. Amen. Shut us down. Say that the governor approved them to be here. Tell us the truth. Be transparent about it.
And it further there was 3, there was 6, there was 8, kept coming. And
We
then,
asked for information and we were shut down. Excuses is not going to help us at this point. We don't have great people from Montgomery to answer questions at a higher level. So the city council cannot backtrack now and say, we didn't know, we didn't know. Isn't that your job?
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to interrupt here or speak on behalf or against the city council. the city council has their meetings, I understand people's frustration, I understand your issues, but I think that we need to address the issues that we were here to talk about, which is federal policy as well as we know it, and what we can do in the state and answering questions. None of us on the stage are part of the city government. We all work together from the top down, and I want us to try to stay focused. I appreciate your passion, I appreciate your concern, and I understand it, but I think we don't need to get into a finger pointing. The commission should have done this, the council should have done this, the state legislators should have done this. I think what we need to do now is hear your question, and the people that were on the stage try to answer as best as we can, and then make a path to move forward. That's what we need to do. And so I don't think we don't need to bring people up on the stage, because then it's, well, you said this, you come up here. We have to be orderly, and that means we have to have the people that are right here to talk, be the ones to talk, and we have to go with the questions in which they're given, because we just don't need to have disorder. And that's what I talked about with the very beginning, was the chaos. And this is an example of chaos that the Biden administration is forcing us to live with. I'm sorry, man, but there's a question. It's chaos.
But Ben, I will say that now from every council meeting, we ask people to come and state their concerns, and we answer them the best we can. And we said, preface it with, you're probably not going to like our answer because we don't have answers. And we talked to these gentlemen, and they talked to their higher ups and pushed it up the ladder, as they've been saying tonight. So when I think we don't want to spread misinformation, so we rather give no information than misinformation, because we don't have any to give. When we have answers, we answer questions as best as possible. People sign in and ask questions before or after every council meeting.
It's frustrating. It don't matter if it's a road paving project, it don't matter what it is. It's frustrating not knowing the answer. But your city council has reached out to us, grasping at straws, and asked, what can we do? What do you know? They're frustrated. I promise you, they're as frustrated as anybody, because they have reached out to us and expressed those frustrations. I think they're grasping at straws too. How do you answer your questions? Because that's the biggest problem we have, is even going to the board and meeting with people, we still don't have answers to basic questions. We don't have those answers, and it's very, very frustrating. But I know they're as frustrated as we are, as you are. They share the frustration.
Next question. I got a statement.
Please use the mic.
My statement is Sylacauga. It's my hometown. And I think that our city government is all that I'm worried about. I appreciate y'all and what y'all do and all that. But I just want my city to know what's going on. So how long has this been going on that they won't say, oh, I didn't know?
Yeah, I think he did say that.
You don't have to tell me how to be nice to somebody and welcome them so hard, because I did. I smiled at every one of them and acknowledged their children and made eye contact with them. So you don't really how to welcome somebody to Sylacauga. The mayor can he don't need to tell me how to like my own thing. I appreciate some answers from the city council.
Okay. What's the question?
The scariest answer anybody can give you is, I don't know. It creates fear, it creates anxiety, it creates mistrust. Somebody's lying. And it causes people to say and do things that are not in their true nature. I have zero problems with immigrants. I lived in South Georgia for the 5 years after the 1996 Immigration Act was changed, and I learned a lot because it was like 75% immigrants from about a dozen different countries. They were all Hispanic, but they became very good friends of mine. The thing is, these people also understood the difference between coming here legally and illegally, because they didn't want people coming here illegally because they know who back home controlled them. They know what they were trying to get away from. And from everything I have seen and heard, the Haitians got a bad rap, really bad. They stand out, we know they existed, they came to your church, you know some of them, it's different with your friends, right? But they, like my grandma from Titus said, stick out like a sore thumb because of the language barrier. They don't speak the same language that anybody else on the face of the planet speaks. Haitian Creole is not the same stuff you get in New Orleans or anywhere else, or any of the other Caribbean countries. It's different. I know for a fact that from speaking with some of them, we had more Nicaraguans than we had Haitians by a bunch. We also could have had some Cubans. We also could have had some Venezuelans. We don't know. That's the problem. That is the big problem. But I want to talk about the CHNV. That program, with all the other programs that exist, that one got kicked out for, I think, abuse, and so does our Attorney General. But this program, they don't call them sponsors, they call them supporters. Why? Because with this program, there's supposed to be some sort of special need that exists. But most of the time, the example given is medical. It's not always that. In fact, that's pretty rare. But they have special needs, and the supporter is supposed to be personal. It's supposed to be more individual. And the place where they're taken is supposed to be a place that can support those special needs. If we don't know they're here, how can we support their needs? It's impossible. And I want to know who prostituted this program, because yes, from everything that I've seen, I'm not shy. I'll walk up to anybody and start talking. Yes, they're being mistreated. They're being treated like they're indentured servants, or at best, the tenant farmers that my grandparents were. It's not fair, it's not right, and my heart goes out to them. But we need answers, and we need to know from the federal government where these things stand. Does E-Verify work?
Part of the problem with the E-Verify is you got to have these folks entered into it when it comes. But let me drop back to a very good point that you made. This program that they're coming in under, this was not what it was designed to do. Right now, the only one that can change that other than the press is the Homeland Security Morocco's.
These people are victims too, because they come here under the understanding that they're going to be able to speak, they're going to be able to live amongst us, they're going to be able to do all this, and then for the most part, they're dumped out in a place they're very unfamiliar with no support system, and the unknowns. And the ones we talked to, they're scared to death, because when they started their journey to where the end of their journey was, is so different than what they thought it was going to be.
Place like Sylacauga, Marshall County, Coffee County, Russellville, Athens, it's not the best place for someone that doesn't speak the language, because we are over an hour from any Creole-speaking case manager, social worker, or nurse. So it presents a language barrier that even if you want to assist that individual, it becomes harder. So why, logically, to help that individual, it makes more sense to have them closer to resources that can communicate with them. So it doesn't make sense to have an individual over an hour away from